The dining room glowed under the warm embrace of our mother's favorite chandelier, casting dancing shadows across the polished mahogany table. I smoothed my dress nervously, stealing glances at David as he charmed my parents with stories from his architecture firm. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had dreamed. The man I loved seamlessly weaving himself into the tapestry of my family. "Sarah's told us so much about you," my father said, refilling David's wineglass. "It's wonderful to finally meet the man who's captured our daughter's heart." David's hand found mine under the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles across my knuckles. "The feeling is mutual, Mr. Chen. Your family has been incredibly welcoming." From across the table, my younger sister Maya watched us with those luminous dark eyes of hers, a soft smile playing at her lips. At 23, she possessed an ethereal beauty that seemed to glow from within. Delicate features framed by cascading black hair, a laugh like wind chimes in summer. She had always been the artistic one, the dreamer, while I had taken the practical path of law school and corporate life. "David, you must tell me about the community center project Maya mentioned. She said you're designing something quite revolutionary." As David launched into an animated description of his sustainable architecture vision, I noticed how Maya leaned forward, her chin resting on her hand, drinking in every word. Her eyes sparkled with genuine interest, or perhaps something else, a quality I couldn't quite name that sent an inexplicable chill down my spine. "That's extraordinary," Maya breathed when he finished. "To think that buildings can actually heal communities. You're not just an architect, you're a visionary." The praise made David's cheeks flush slightly, and I felt a flutter of pride mixed with something darker. Maya had always been generous with her admiration, especially toward my achievements. Growing up, I had been her protector, her champion. When she struggled in school, I tutored her through long nights. When she faced heartbreak, I held her while she sobbed. When she needed money for art supplies, I emptied my savings without question. My love for her was as natural as breathing, fierce, protective, unconditional. "Maya's quite the artist herself," I said, squeezing David's hand. "She's having her first gallery showing next month." "Sarah's being modest," Maya laughed, that musical sound filling the space between us. "I owe everything to my amazing big sister." But as her gaze shifted to David, I caught something in her expression, a fleeting moment where her mask of sisterly affection seemed to slip, revealing something hungry and calculating beneath. It lasted only a heartbeat before her usual warmth returned, but it was enough to plant a seed of unease in my chest. The evening concluded with hugs and promises of future dinners. As we drove home, David was effusive in his praise. "Your family is incredible, Sarah. I can see where you get your warmth and strength. And Maya, she's remarkable, so passionate about art, so insightful about everything." "She's always been special," I agreed, though that strange moment from dinner lingered in my mind like a shadow at the edge of vision. That night, as I lay in David's arms listening to his steady breathing, I tried to shake off my discomfort. Maya was my sister, my heart's closest companion. The idea that I had seen anything untoward in her expression was surely a product of pre-meeting nerves and too much wine. Yet sleep eluded me, and I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering why something that should have felt like a perfect beginning now carried the weight of an ending I couldn't yet name. The changes began subtly, like hairline cracks in a masterpiece that only become visible when the light hits just right. 3 weeks after that dinner, Maya started appearing in David's conversations with increasing frequency. "Your sister texted me today," he mentioned casually over breakfast, not looking up from his phone. "She wanted advice about displaying her paintings for the gallery show." "That's thoughtful of you to help," I replied, though something twisted in my stomach. Maya had never asked me for advice about her art. She had always been fiercely independent in her creative pursuits. The texts became daily occurrences. Maya would send David pictures of her artwork, asking for his architectural perspective on composition. She invited him to coffee to discuss the intersection of visual and spatial design. Each interaction was perfectly innocent when viewed in isolation, yet together they formed a pattern that made my skin crawl with dread. David, for his part, seemed genuinely pleased by Maya's attention. "She's so intellectually curious," he would say. "It's refreshing to meet someone who thinks so deeply about the creative process." I wanted to scream that I, too, could be intellectually curious, that I had spent years analyzing complex legal briefs and corporate structures. But those words felt petty and small in my throat, so I swallowed them along with my growing anxiety. The real blow came during Maya's gallery opening. I'd spent weeks promoting the event, using every connection in my professional network to ensure a good turnout. The gallery buzzed with well-dressed patrons admiring Maya's ethereal landscapes and abstract portraits. I should have felt proud, my little sister's dreams finally taking flight. But my joy curdled when I saw David standing before Maya's centerpiece, a haunting self-portrait she had titled "The Woman in Waiting." Maya stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his forearm as she explained her technique. "The key is in the layering," she said, her voice soft and intimate. "Each stroke builds upon the last, creating depth that only reveals itself when you truly look." The metaphor felt deliberate, pointed, as if she were speaking about more than paint and canvas. "Sarah," Maya called out when she spotted me approaching, "come see what David thinks of my latest work." But David's attention remained fixed on the painting, or perhaps on Maya herself. "It's extraordinary," he murmured. "There's something so alive about it, so raw and honest." "Unlike my corporate law briefs," I said, attempting lightness but hearing the bitter edge in my own voice. David finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my blood turn to ice. It was the same expression he'd worn when we first met: wonder, fascination, the spark of new discovery. Except now it was directed at my sister. The weeks that followed brought a parade of small cruelties. David would answer Maya's calls during our dinner dates, stepping away for just a minute that stretched into 20. He began comparing us in subtle ways, praising Maya's natural creativity while describing my work as impressively structured. When I suggested weekend plans, he would check if Maya might be free to join us, as if her presence had become essential to his happiness. The confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday evening in November. I'd come home early, hoping to surprise David with his favorite takeout, only to find him on our couch with Maya curled beside him, her head on his shoulder, as they scrolled through something on his laptop together. They sprang apart when I entered, guilt written across their faces in bold strokes. "Sarah," Maya exclaimed, her cheeks flushed. David was showing me some architectural photographs from his Italy trip." "In the dark?" I asked, noting that they hadn't bothered to turn on any lights. The laptop screen provided the only illumination, creating an intimate cocoon around their intertwined forms. David stood awkwardly, running a hand through his hair. We lost track of time. Maya had some questions about European design influences for her next series. The lies came so easily from both their lips. I set the takeout bags on the kitchen counter with deliberate care, using the mundane action to steady myself against the earthquake happening in my chest. "Maya, could we talk privately?" Maya's face cycled through several expressions: surprise, calculation, And finally, a kind of defiant resolve. Of course. We walked to my childhood bedroom, where the walls still held echoes of our shared secrets and midnight conversations. Maya perched on the edge of my old desk, swinging her legs like she used to do as a child, but her eyes held none of childhood's innocence. "How long?" I asked simply. "How long what?" But her voice lacked conviction. "How long have you been planning to steal him from me?" The question hung between us like a blade. For a moment, Maya's carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing something raw and desperate beneath. "I didn't plan anything, Sarah. It just happened. Feelings can't be controlled. You, of all people, should know that." "Feelings?" I laughed, but it sounded like glass breaking. "Is that what you're calling this manipulation? This calculated seduction of your sister's boyfriend?" Maya's expression hardened, her delicate features taking on sharp edges. "You don't understand. You've always had everything handed to you. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. You never had to fight for anything." "I fought for David every day. I fought against my own insecurities, my fear that I wasn't good enough for him. I never imagined I'd have to fight my own sister. Maybe if you'd paid attention to what you had instead of taking it for granted, you wouldn't have lost it." Maya's words were designed to wound, and they found their mark with surgical precision. "You're my sister," I said, my voice breaking. "I loved you more than anyone in this world. I protected you, sacrificed for you, believed in you when no one else did. How could you do this to me?" For a moment, Maya's mask slipped entirely, and I saw the scared, jealous girl beneath. "Because you never needed protecting. You were always the strong one, the successful one, the one everyone admired. For once, I wanted to be the one who won." "This isn't a game, Maya. This is my life, my heart. And now it's mine," she said, lifting her chin with familiar stubbornness. "David and I understand each other in ways you never could. We're both artists, both dreamers. You're too practical, too focused on building walls instead of creating beauty." The words hit me like physical blows, each one carefully chosen to exploit my deepest insecurities. But something strange happened in that moment of maximum pain. Instead of crumbling, I felt something inside me crystallize into diamond-hard clarity. "You're right," I said quietly. "I am practical. Practical enough to see that what you and David have isn't love. It's infatuation mixed with betrayal. And practical enough to know that neither of you will find happiness built on the ruins of someone else's trust." I left Maya sitting in my childhood bedroom and returned to the living room, where David waited with the expression of a man facing his own execution. "I'll pack your things," I said calmly. "Please be gone by tomorrow evening." "Sarah, wait, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You've made your choice. Both of you have." As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I heard Maya emerge from my old room. Their voices carried up to me, David's pleading and confused, Maya's triumphant yet somehow hollow. I closed the door and slid down against it, finally allowing the tears to come. But even in my grief, I was surprised to find another emotion rooting alongside the pain, a strange sense of liberation, as if I had been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale.
3 months passed in a haze of long work hours and quiet evenings. I threw myself into a pro bono case involving housing rights for underprivileged families, finding solace in purpose beyond my own wounded heart. My parents called frequently, their voices heavy with confusion and disappointment about Maya's behavior. She had moved in with David within a week of our confrontation, a fact that surprised no one except possibly themselves. The first sign that their fairy tale was developing cracks came through my mother's worried phone call in February. "She came by yesterday," Mom said carefully. "Maya, I mean. She seemed different, harder somehow. And when your father asked about David's work, she became very defensive, almost angry." "How is she?" I asked, surprised by my own concern. "Thin, too thin. And she stopped painting," she said. "Claims she's too busy helping David with his projects, but..." Mom's voice trailed off meaningfully. I had heard through mutual friends that David's community center project had fallen through, victim to budget cuts and political maneuvering. The setback had apparently hit him hard, and he'd been struggling to find new inspiration for his work. The second sign came when Maya appeared at my office on a gray March afternoon, looking nothing like the glowing artist who had stolen my life 6 months earlier. Her eyes were hollow, her usually pristine appearance disheveled. "I need to talk to you," she said without preamble. We went to a coffee shop across the street, sitting in a corner booth while rain streaked the windows. Maya stared into her untouched latte as if it held answers to questions she was afraid to ask. "He's different, David, not the man I thought he was." "What do you mean?" "He's small, petty. When his project failed, instead of moving forward, he became bitter. He blames everyone else, his former partners, the city council, even you." She looked up at me with eyes that seemed years older. "He says you made him weak, made him doubt himself." I felt no satisfaction in this revelation, only a deep sadness for the man I had once loved and the sister who was clearly drowning. "Maya," she interrupted, "I see it now. What I thought was passion between us was just his way of trying to prove something to himself. And what I thought was love was just my need to take something that belonged to you." Her voice cracked. "I destroyed everything for nothing." We sat in silence, two sisters on opposite sides of a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered finally. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I was jealous and selfish, and I convinced myself that I deserved what you had. But I didn't deserve it, did I? I didn't earn it through love and trust and all the things that actually matter." Looking at my sister, truly seeing her for the first time in months, I recognized the scared girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when she thought she wasn't as smart as me, who had always lived in my shadow and had finally tried to step into my light. "No," I said gently, "you didn't." Maya nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I've lost everything. David, you, Mom and Dad's respect, my art. I can't even paint anymore. It's like I killed the best part of myself when I betrayed you." "The best part of yourself isn't gone, Maya. It's just buried under a lot of pain and poor choices. How can you be kind to me after what I did?" I considered this question, probing my own heart for the answer. Because hating you would make me become someone I don't want to be, and because you're my sister, even when you're not acting like one. The final revelation came 2 weeks later when David appeared at my apartment, looking haggard and desperate. I almost didn't let him in, but something in his appearance, a brokenness that went beyond professional disappointment, made me open the door. "She's gone," he said without preamble. "Maya, she left this morning, took her things, and disappeared."
I gestured him to the couch, but remained standing, maintaining distance between us. "I made a mistake, Sarah. A terrible mistake. Maya wasn't..." She wasn't who I thought she was. When things got difficult, she became someone else entirely. Critical, demanding, manipulative. He looked up at me with eyes that begged for understanding. She tried to change everything about me, about my work, about how I saw myself. With you, I felt like I could be my authentic self. With her, I felt like I was constantly performing. And now you want me back? I said flatly. I know I don't deserve it. I know I hurt you in the worst possible way. But what we had was real, Sarah. It was built on something solid that I threw away for an illusion. I studied this man I had once planned to marry, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The David I had fallen in love with had been kind, ambitious, and genuine, but he had also been weak in ways I hadn't recognized, susceptible to flattery, easily swayed by surface attractions, quick to abandon loyalty when something shinier appeared. You're right, I said finally. What we had was real. Past tense. Sarah, please. I know I can be the man you deserved, the man I used to be. I don't doubt that you could be, I replied, but I'm not the same woman I was. The Sarah who would take you back, who would pretend this betrayal never happened, who would build her happiness on the foundation of forgiveness without trust, that woman died the night I found you with my sister. David's face crumpled. Then what do I do? How do I live with what I've done? You figure out how to be a better man for the next woman who trusts you with her heart. And you learn to live with the consequences of your choices, just like Maya and I have had to do. After he left, I sat in my living room as evening shadows lengthened across the floor. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt clean, full of possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'm going away for a while. Maybe we can talk someday when I've learned how to be your sister again. I love you, even though I lost the right to say it. M. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. I love you too. That never changed, even when everything else did. Find yourself, Maya. The real you is worth finding. 6 months later, I was offered a partnership at a firm specializing in human rights law. The work was challenging and meaningful, aligned with values I had sometimes lost sight of during my corporate climbing years. My days were full of purpose, my evenings filled with books, friends, and the kind of peace that comes from living authentically. On a warm September evening, I received an email with photos attached. Maya, looking healthy and vibrant, standing before an easel in what appeared to be a sun-drenched studio. Her paintings had evolved, deeper, more complex, touched with the hard-won wisdom that comes from facing one's own darkness and choosing to create light instead. Her message was brief. Learning to paint myself back into existence. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I printed one of the photos and placed it on my desk, not as a symbol of forgiveness, that had already been freely given, but as a reminder that love, when it's real, survives even the worst betrayals. Not unchanged, perhaps, but transformed into something stronger and more conscious than it was before. David, I heard through mutual friends, had taken a job with an environmental firm in Portland. Maya was living in a small artists' colony in New Mexico, slowly rebuilding her creative life and learning to live with herself. I wished them both well, meaning it sincerely. As for me, I was learning that happiness built on one's own foundation, on values lived consciously, on relationships chosen thoughtfully, on forgiveness given freely, but trust earned carefully, was more durable than any happiness dependent on another person's constancy. The woman who had once defined herself through her relationships with others was discovering the profound satisfaction of defining herself by her own choices, her own growth, her own capacity for both justice and mercy. On quiet evenings, I would sometimes think about that perfect dinner 6 months ago, when everything seemed aligned for my own fairy tale ending. Now I understood that real life wasn't about perfect endings, but about how we handle the inevitable plot twists, the betrayals that reveal character, the losses that teach us what we truly value. I had lost a sister and a lover, but I had found myself, and in the end, that trade felt not like defeat, but like the most profound victory of all.